Let's first start with the breaking news, because just in the last couple of hours, our favorite topic hit the news: late night television, because this is a late night podcast, a late night live show. You know, my passion is talking about how late night television illustrates the trends in media more broadly and culture more broadly. So this story broke. We can put the Variety headline up about Jimmy Kimmel being sidelined by ABC News. And this timeline is going to be very important for you to pay attention to, because already the alarm is being sounded about Trump's authoritarian crackdown on the media. I'm going to read a little bit from the New York Times story here. ABC announced on Wednesday evening that it was pulling Jimmy Kimmel's late night show indefinitely after criticism of comments he made on his Monday program about the motives of the man who is accused of fatally shooting the conservative activist Charlie Kirk last week. The abrupt decision by the network, which is owned by the Walt Disney Company, came hours after the chairman of the Federal Communications Commission, Brendan Carr, assailed Mr. Kimmel's remarks and suggested that his regulatory agency might take action against ABC because of them. In his opening monologue on Monday, Mr. Kimmel had addressed the killing of Mr. Kirk by saying, and you may have seen this, we hit some new lows over the weekend, and actually, why don't we just roll this clip? Here you go, S2.
We hit some new lows over the weekend with the MAGA gang desperately trying to characterize this kid who murdered Charlie Kirk as anything other than one of them, and doing everything they can to score political points from it.
So I went back and looked. That was taped Monday. Kimmel Show was taped Monday. As of Sunday, Utah Governor Spencer Cox had pretty definitively weighed in and said investigators had been told that the suspect, Tyler Robinson's ideology was, quote, pretty leftist, and that he had been, quote, radicalized. And we knew that information was available to investigators. We knew that information, in addition to the fact, of course, that a conservative activist was assassinated in cold blood on a college campus in the middle of a speech about conservatism. I actually was fairly open-minded for the first 48 or so hours about who may have been behind this, given the weird irony posting that was leaking into the public from the suspect, and also just the fact that to Charlie's virtue, to his great virtue, some of his most bitter enemies were fringe radical weirdos who believed themselves to be of the right. So it was, of course, possible. But by the time Jimmy Kimmel taped this episode and made these abhorrent comments, misinforming his audience, this was all known. What a disgusting thing to do. And what a reckless thing for ABC to do. They had that information in front of them, and in the wake, I mean, this is within days of the historic collective national trauma of seeing a 31-year-old activist shot in the throat for speaking on a college campus. This is how Jimmy Kimmel reacted. Now, reading more here from the Times cover tonight, the head of Nexstar may, quote, soon have a major piece of business before the federal government, having just announced a deal to acquire Tegna, one of its biggest rivals, for $6.2 billion. The deal is sure to receive scrutiny from the Trump administration, particularly the FCC, which has in recent months put media mergers under a microscope. So what that is in reference to is the fact that Nexstar said it was replacing Jimmy Kimmel's show with different broadcasting. And that came after FCC Chairman Brendan Carr, who, of course, we had on the show not long ago, said that ABC needed to either act on its own or something would have to be done. Something else might have to be done. He basically said we could do this the easy way or the hard way, a not so thinly veiled threat. Let's listen to what Brendan Carr said about some of this on our show right here not long ago.
The obligation, the public interest obligation, is on the local TV station. So, for instance, if they don't feel like the programs that they're getting from CBS Central meet the needs of their communities or further the public interest, then they should have the right, and they're supposed to, in their agreements, to preempt the programming and do something else.
That was on August 4th. And what Brendan Carr is talking about there is the public interest standard that broadcasters who are basically renting these airwaves from the government have in order to retain their licenses. That public interest standard has not been invoked often by Republicans at all, or Democrats really at all, in the way that the Trump administration has wielded it, because conservatives said, you hold the powers of the federal government. And never has anyone basically ever mounted a serious threat to these massive media conglomerates and corporate entities who slander Republicans day in and day out in ways that are just completely factually untrue, arguably maliciously untrue. These are not just easy mistakes or errors. And so Brendan Carr gets in and says, well, hey, we're going to do something about it. Here's what he said on Benny Johnson, another guest of ours. Here's what he said on Benny's show earlier, before Nexstar made its decision, and then also before we heard from Disney making their decision as well.
In some quarters, there's a very concerted effort to try to lie to the American people about the nature, as you indicate, of one of the most significant newsworthy public interest acts that we've seen in a long time. And what appears to be an action by Jimmy Kimmel to play into that narrative that this was somehow a MAGA or Republican motivated person. If that's what happened here with his conduct, that is really, really sick. I mean, look, we can do this the easy way or the hard way. These companies can find ways to change conduct, to take action, frankly, on Kimmel, or there's going to be additional work for the FCC ahead.
So I checked in with a source who had knowledge before we went to air here, who interestingly framed this as, quote, local broadcasters standing up to big Hollywood. If you look at market cap, Nexstar is dwarfed by the big guys, Disney, Paramount, News Corp. It is truly in that sense smaller than these other guys. And by, measures, it's significantly smaller than some of, for example, Disney, Paramount, and News Corp. So to that extent, if you have local broadcasters saying they're uncomfortable putting Jimmy Kimmel on their airwaves in, Philly or Milwaukee or wherever it is, sure, you can understand it in that respect. It is this conglomerate of local stations saying, we don't want anything to do with this. Now there's a wrinkle. Nexstar is currently trying to get a merger through. Does that sound familiar? It's what we were talking to Brendan Carr about with Paramount and Skydance earlier as well. And so it's also now being accused, Nexstar is being accused of kind of threatening ABC to get rid of Kimmel by leveraging the local news stations. So we're taking you off the air. But really in the interest, as the accusation goes, of kind of greasing the wheels of this merger deal with Tegna, which would be significant. And I'm not for media consolidation in anywhere whatsoever. And I do think the appearance here is not great. But I also want to put this post up from Megyn Kelly herself, who pointed out, this is just a fantastic deep cut. It feels like so long ago now. In 2021, ABC fired Chris Harrison. Remember that? Bachelorette host, for saying maybe we should judge a Bachelorette contestant's attendance at an antebellum party, but what was considered offensive at the time. He was fired, and as Megyn points out, his career never recovered. How about all of the boycotts the left organized of corporations, corporate advertisers, to pressure the journalists at Fox News to behave in ways that corporations approved of? That's something that happened. Remember when Laura Ingraham, this must have been like 2018, put out a post about David Hogg whining that he didn't get into some of the colleges he applied to, and there was a corporate advertiser boycott organized by nonprofits on the left, cheerleaded by the left, because Laura Ingraham put out a tweet about David Hogg's college acceptances. We all have memories of just hundreds of examples of how these networks have behaved in one direction. And so, yes, to some extent, this is clearly just a reckoning. Jordan Weissman from the left posted, so to recap recent media events, Larry Ellison's son bought CBS and promptly began remaking its news as a conservative network. We learned Ellison and Trump donors at AZ16 would get to buy U.S. TikTok. ABC suspended Jimmy Kimmel after a mere threat by the FCC. Sure feels like American Orbanism. In reference to Viktor Orban of Hungary. What felt to me like American how do I put this? Without invoking this weird reference to Viktor Orban, how do I put this? Soft American authoritarianism was the last, 30 years, 20 years of media conduct in the United States. So while it really doesn't bring me any pleasure to see the government put its thumb on the scale more, it's a rebalancing. It's very clearly a rebalancing in every sense. It's a rebalancing. Finally, let's put up, before we bring Batya in to get her reaction to all of this, Donald Trump's post. He has been truth socialing. I can't say tweeting anymore. He has been truth socialing in the early hours of the morning in the UK. He said, "Great news for America." F3, we can put it up. "The ratings challenge Jimmy Kimmel show is canceled. Congratulations to ABC for finally having the courage to do what had to be done. Kimmel has zero talent and worse ratings than even Colbert, if that's possible. That leaves Jimmy and Seth, two total losers on fake news NBC. Their ratings are also horrible. Do it, NBC." President DJT. Now, the Wall Street Journal, about 30 minutes before we went to air, actually reported that ABC is hoping to have Kimmel back on the air within a couple of days. So the president's post saying that Kimmel's show has been canceled appears to be premature. But of course, as Jordan Weissman pointed out, this comes on the heels of all of these other deals. Obviously, the cancellation of Stephen Colbert's show, but that's where we're going to leave it for now before we bring Batya in, is that there's this right now argument. The pressure from the government and from Trump has to have been what induced this decision by ABC. It all has to, from Nexstar, it has to have been about the merger. And maybe, by the way, from Nexstar, it was about the merger. But what that does is pretend as though there are not significant market forces and obvious ethical concerns about what Jimmy Kimmel did, and says, because there are conflicts, this must necessarily be a matter of a conflict of interest, as opposed to these very obvious ethical lapses and very obvious challenges in the market, meaning people who watch late night television, ABC, whatever, maybe they watch Good Morning America and they're mad about Jimmy Kimmel, they're mad about the network, and they're going to switch to Today Show or something, whatever it is. There are serious market forces against what's happening in all of these cases. And I think to act as though those aren't also part of the equation is absolutely stupid, and just completely missing a big part of the real story. Recently, I learned about colostrum. Have you heard about colostrum? I always want to do a Trump impression when I'm talking about, known as liquid gold that babies receive from their mothers after birth. It's packed with proteins, natural growth factors, antimicrobial peptides that work to enhance your immune response, reduce inflammation, repair and balance gut lining, reduce bloating, and make your hair and skin look amazing. Today's sponsor, Cowboy Colostrum, offers the highest quality cow colostrum available in the U.S., 100% made in America from 100% American grass-fed cows. They're the best cows, folks. They don't over-process or strip their colostrum, leaving it whole, full-fat, and high-protein for ultimate nutrient density. It is the highest quality bovine colostrum you can buy, and it's easy to drink, made with delicious natural ingredients and no artificial flavors. It really is easy to drink. Simply add a 3-gram scoop of either the chocolate, Madagascar vanilla, or strawberry in your coffee or smoothie, or actually even in milk. It's really tasty. For a limited time, our listeners get up to 25% off their entire order. Just head to cowboycolostrum.com/afterparty and use code AFTERPARTY at checkout. That's 25% off when you use code AFTERPARTY at cowboycolostrum.com/afterparty. After you purchase, they'll ask you where you heard about them, so please support our show and tell them our show sent you. Say, I came from After Party for the best cows.